The words, sharp and laced with a dismissive sneer, fell from my husband's lips like shattered glass. "You're just ordinary, Isolde. That's why I looked elsewhere. You're too distracted by your little hobbies to even notice." I stood in our sprawling, minimalist living room, overlooking the shimmering expanse of the Ethelberg coastline. The scent of salt and eucalyptus usually calmed me, but that evening, it felt heavy, suffocating. Julian, my husband of 15 years, had just confessed his infidelity, not with remorse, but with a blame so audacious it almost stole my breath. He stood there, magnificent in his tailored suit, his eyes alight with a self-righteous indignation that would have been laughable if it hadn't torn a hole right through my chest. Ordinary, distracted. His words echoed in the sudden silence, bouncing off the pristine white walls, each syllable a fresh wound. For a moment, I said nothing. My silence, a trait he often mistook for complacency, was in fact a well-honed shield, a quiet observation post from which I surveyed the world. But this time, it was more than just observation. It was a slow, simmering inferno. He hadn't just betrayed our vows. He had utterly dismissed my existence, my worth, the very essence of who I was. He had painted me as a drab backdrop to his vibrant, self-aggrandizing drama, and the sting of that belittlement cut deeper than the act of infidelity itself. Julian misinterpreted my stillness, as he always did. He took a step closer, his voice dropping, though the arrogance remained. "Are you even listening, Isolde, or are you planning your next garden layout? Your little family trust accounts?" I needed someone who saw me, someone who understood what it takes to climb to succeed. He gestured vaguely towards the panoramic windows, as if the entire cityscape below, with its twinkling lights and towering structures, was a monument to his singular ambition. He truly believed I was merely a housewife, albeit a comfortably endowed one, dabbling in pleasantries while he, the titan of industry, conquered the world. He believed my family trust was a modest inheritance, enough to keep me in designer dresses and manicured gardens, but certainly nothing of consequence compared to his burgeoning empire. He saw me as a quiet, domestic creature content with the crumbs of his attention, utterly oblivious to the grand machinations of the corporate world he inhabited. And that, I realized in that crushing moment, was his most colossal mistake. The truth was, while Julian was tirelessly climbing the corporate ladder, I had been building the very scaffolding he used. While he chased titles and bonuses, I had quietly acquired the ground upon which his grand edifice stood. My little hobbies included overseeing a global investment portfolio, negotiating intricate mergers, and, ironically, holding the controlling stake in the very conglomerate that owned Oceana Innovations, the tech firm where Julian was the celebrated chief operating officer. But he knew none of this. He saw the quiet wife who prepared his meticulously healthy meals, who managed the household staff, who listened patiently to his endless monologues about market strategies and upcoming deals. He saw the woman who, in his eyes, had willingly receded into the background, allowing his star to shine brightest. He saw the ordinary woman he could conveniently blame for his own moral failings. Distracted, I finally whispered, my voice barely audible, yet each word was a calculated strike. "By what, Julian? By living my life while you were elsewhere?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The quiet conviction in my tone seemed to momentarily unnerve him, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes before he quickly regained his composure, brushing it off as my typical, passive-aggressive behavior. "Don't try to twist this, Isolde," he scoffed, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "You know exactly what I mean. You're always so detached, so calm. It's unnerving. I needed passion, excitement. Someone who actually understood my world." His gaze drifted over my simple, elegant silk dress, then to the unadorned platinum band on my finger, a subtle sneer playing on his lips. "You haven't changed in 15 years, have you? Always the same." The same. If only he knew how much I had changed, how much I had grown, how vast and intricate my world had become while he was busy believing his own hype. The truth was a carefully guarded secret, a weapon I had never intended to wield, but which now gleamed in my mind, sharp and lethal. He spoke of my detachment, my calmness, But what he perceived as a lack of engagement was, in fact, an immense power held in reserve. I had created a life of quiet luxury, preferring efficacy to ostentation, impact to applause. I had learned early on that true power didn't need to shout, it simply was. And now he had awakened it. He had taken my quiet strength and mistaken it for weakness. He had taken my patience and mistaken it for apathy. He had taken my love and, in his arrogance, shattered it. But in that shattering, a clarity emerged, a cold, unwavering resolve. Julian had thrown the first stone, and in doing so, he had invited a reckoning he could never have anticipated. The ordinary wife, the distracted woman, was about to show him exactly what she was capable of. And the stage for his undoing, unknowingly to him, was already set within the very walls of his cherished Oceana innovations. He had blamed my distraction. Soon, he would learn what true focus, born of betrayal, could achieve. The air in the room thickened, not with the typical domestic tension of a marital spat, but with a nascent, almost palpable energy. It was the calm before a storm Julian was entirely oblivious to. He continued his tirade, his voice rising in righteous indignation, oblivious to the fact that his ordinary wife was already calculating the trajectory of his fall. He was so busy looking elsewhere, he failed to see the silent strength standing right in front of him, preparing to dismantle his carefully constructed world, piece by excruciating piece. The game, I realized with a chilling certainty, had just begun. Our story began, as many do, with youthful idealism and a fierce, undeniable attraction. Julian and I met at a charity gala in Ethelberg, a coastal city where the old money mingled with the new tech elite, all against the backdrop of crashing waves and a perpetual sea breeze. He was a junior executive, bursting with ambition, his eyes sparkling with a vision of a future he was determined to conquer. I was, even then, a quiet observer, recently having inherited a significant, yet complex, portfolio of assets after my grandmother's passing. My family, though prominent, had always valued discretion over display. My grandmother had taught me that true power lay not in its flaunting, but in its quiet, strategic deployment. Julian saw in me, I believe, a blend of mystery and quiet elegance. He was drawn to my calm demeanor, my thoughtful pauses, which he perhaps initially mistook for intriguing depth rather than what they truly were, careful consideration. I, in turn, was captivated by his vivacity, his unwavering belief in himself, and the sheer force of his personality. He made me laugh, pulled me out of my shell, and for a long time, I mistook his grand pronouncements for genuine strength, his relentless drive for unwavering loyalty. Our wedding, a picturesque affair overlooking the sapphire waters of the Pacific, felt like the culmination of a fairy tale. I wore a simple, elegant gown, and Julian beamed, a picture of confident charm. We settled into a stunning cliffside home in the more exclusive part of Ethelberg, a house that perfectly balanced modern architecture with breathtaking natural beauty. He was quickly climbing the ranks at various tech startups, his career trajectory ever upward. I, meanwhile, managed my inherited assets, a task far more intricate than anyone, especially Julian, ever suspected. Cyrus Khan, my grandmother's longtime legal counsel and now mine, was the only one who truly understood the breadth of my responsibilities. He was a man of impeccable integrity, his silver hair and sharp eyes belying a deeply kind and protective nature. Isolde, he would often say during our quarterly reviews, spread out amidst complex legal documents in his oak-paneled office. You are a true visionary. The way you've grown these holdings, diversified the portfolio. It's extraordinary. You could be running a multinational corporation, yet you choose this quiet path. He never pushed, but his words were a constant, gentle reminder of the power I held. I valued his counsel immensely, his unwavering belief in my capabilities a balm to the subtle erosions Julian's subtle dismissals sometimes inflicted. My closest friend, Dr. Anya Sharma, was another beacon in my life. Anya, with her bright eyes and infectious laugh, was a successful pediatrician who always saw through the carefully constructed facades people presented. She knew the real Isolde, the one who devoured complex financial reports, who debated economic theories with Cyrus, and who, despite her reserved nature, possessed a fierce intellect and an even fiercer heart. "He doesn't appreciate you, Izzy," she'd often say over our weekly coffee, her brow furrowed with concern. "He's too busy admiring his own reflection. You're a diamond, and he thinks you're just a pretty pebble." I would usually just smile, a little sadly, and change the subject. It wasn't that I disagreed, but I was stubbornly holding onto the hope that Julian would eventually see me, truly see me, for who I was. Julian, for his part, was a whirlwind of activity. He moved to Oceana Innovations 5 years ago, drawn by its ambitious vision and rapid growth. He quickly became their golden boy, his charisma and strategic mind propelling him to the COO position within 3 years. He loved to regale me with tales of his corporate victories, his shrewd negotiations, his decisive leadership. He would pace our living room, gesturing emphatically, explaining market dynamics and product rollouts, often without waiting for my input or even acknowledgement. I would listen, sometimes offering a quiet, insightful question that he would dismiss with a wave of his hand, saying, "Oh, you wouldn't understand the nuances, Isolde. It's complex." He saw my management of the family trust as a pleasant pastime, a way to keep myself occupied. He'd occasionally ask, with a patronizing pat on my arm, "How are your little accounts doing, dear? Still keeping you out of mischief?" The irony was almost unbearable. My little accounts funded several venture capital firms, held controlling interests in various industries, and were, in fact, the ultimate parent company of Oceana Innovations, a fact known only to Cyrus, Patrick O'Connell, the acting CEO, who reported directly to the holding company, and a very select few at the top legal and financial echelons. My days were a carefully orchestrated ballet of meetings with fund managers, reviewing detailed financial statements, strategizing investment opportunities, and discreetly guiding the larger corporate entities under my umbrella. Yet to Julian, I was still the woman who spent her afternoons gardening, reading obscure novels, and perfecting complex recipes. He'd often return home late, tired but invigorated, expecting a quiet dinner and a willing ear for his triumphs, leaving me feeling like an ornament in his grand life, rather than its quiet architect. The warmth of our early years had slowly cooled into a comfortable, yet increasingly distant, coexistence. The passion he spoke of, the excitement he craved, he no longer sought in me. He saw the tranquil surface, but never bothered to dive into the profound depths that lay beneath. His dismissiveness, initially subtle, grew bolder with his rising success. He started referring to my interests as distractions, my quietude as lack of engagement, my thoughtful nature as being ordinary. I remember a conversation just months before his confession. We were at a dinner party hosted by one of his colleagues. Julian was holding court, regaling the table with a story of a difficult negotiation he had spearheaded. When I offered a small, insightful point about the geopolitical implications he hadn't considered, he chuckled, patting my hand. "Isolde, darling, stick to your books. Business strategy isn't quite your forte." The table laughed politely, and a flush crept up my neck, not of embarrassment, but of a quiet, burning indignation. Even Anya, seated across from us, gave him a look that could curdle milk. That night, Julian had fallen asleep quickly, his arm casually draped over me. But I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the coastal breeze rattling the windows. His words echoed. "Not quite your forte." The man who believed he was a master strategist, completely oblivious to the fact that his ordinary wife routinely made decisions that impacted global markets. He saw me as a pleasant accessory, a quiet fixture in his grand narrative. The warmth had faded, replaced by a growing chill, a sense of being perpetually underestimated, invisibly diminished. Our bond, once a source of strength, had become a silken cord, binding me to a reality that was increasingly suffocating. I loved the man I thought Julian was, the man I married. But the man he had become, arrogant and dismissive, was a stranger. And as I stared into the darkness that night, a tiny, defiant spark ignited within me. The ordinary wife was tired of being ordinary. The distracted woman was about to become very, very focused. The first crack in my carefully constructed world, the initial tremor that signaled the impending earthquake, arrived not with a bang, but with a series of subtle, unsettling shifts in Julian. It began with the late nights, which were nothing new for a high-flying COO, but the excuses became more elaborate, less convincing. Then came the sudden disinterest in our usual routines, our shared morning coffee, our quiet evenings on the patio. He became increasingly irritable, his attention fragmented, his eyes often glued to his phone, even during our strained dinners. One evening, about 6 months before his confession, I walked into his study to find him on a video call. He didn't see me at first, his back to the door. His voice, usually so controlled, was laced with a flirtatious playfulness I hadn't heard directed at me in years. He laughed, a light, easy sound, at something unseen on the screen. "Serena, you're a genius," he purred, the words a physical blow. "This proposal is brilliant. We should celebrate properly." I quietly retreated before he could notice me, my heart a dull ache in my chest. Serena. I had heard him mention a new junior executive, Serena Dubois, a rising star in his department. He described her as sharp and ambitious, words he once used to describe himself, never me. I dismissed it initially as professional camaraderie, but a cold tendril of doubt had begun to coil in my gut. The next notable shift was his sudden obsession with his appearance, beyond his usual meticulousness. New, trendier clothes appeared in his wardrobe, expensive colognes he hadn't worn before, and a renewed dedication to the gym that bordered on fanaticism. He was trying too hard, radiating an almost desperate need to impress. This wasn't the Julian who was comfortable in his own skin. This was a man seeking validation, attention, from outside our home. The emotional distance grew, becoming a chasm. Our conversations became perfunctory, centered around logistics or his work. When I tried to bridge the gap, to ask about his day beyond the surface, he would sigh, or interrupt, or revert to his familiar dismissal. "You wouldn't understand, Isolde, it's not your world." My quiet attempts at connection were met with a wall of indifference, making me feel increasingly invisible. Then came the credit card statements. They weren't egregious, but they were certainly out of character. Several charges from high-end boutiques I never frequented, expensive restaurants we hadn't visited together, a weekend getaway to a boutique hotel in a neighboring coastal town, all expenses Julian had previously deemed unnecessary extravagance. I didn't confront him directly. Instead, I simply observed, feeling a dull ache transform into a sharp, painful clarity. The pieces were falling into place, painting an undeniable picture. The true moment of chilling realization came during a quiet evening at home. Julian was engrossed in his phone, a slight, private smile playing on his lips. I was reading in the armchair opposite him, pretending to be absorbed in my book. He thought I wasn't paying attention. He typed quickly, then chuckled softly to himself. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. He picked it up, eyes scanning, and then a quick, almost imperceptible glance in my direction before he quickly turned the screen away. But it was too late. I had caught a glimpse of the notification. "Serena Dubois, can't wait for tomorrow." My breath hitched. My hands, still holding the book, trembled almost imperceptibly. He had seen me, then tried to hide it. That fleeting moment of guilt, quickly masked by his usual arrogance, sealed it. It wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was certainty. The woman he had praised, whose brilliance he admired, was now undeniably more than just a colleague. The pain was a physical entity, a tight band around my chest, making it difficult to breathe. It wasn't just the infidelity, though that was a searing wound. It was the condescension, the deceit, the casual disregard for everything we had built. He was living a double life, all the while casting me as the ordinary wife, too distracted to notice. The audacity of it all, the sheer arrogance, was breathtaking. I remember excusing myself and walking out onto our balcony, the cool night air doing little to soothe the fire in my veins. The ocean stretched out before me, vast and indifferent, mirroring the emptiness I felt inside. I leaned against the railing, clutching it until my knuckles ached. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not for him. Not for the man who saw me as an obstacle, a shadow in his glorious path. In that moment, a profound shift occurred within me. The hurt was still there, raw and throbbing, but beneath it, a cold resolve began to solidify. Julian saw me as weak, as oblivious. He thought I was distracted by my quiet life, my harmless hobbies. He believed he was pulling off a sophisticated deception, too clever for his ordinary wife. But he had fundamentally underestimated me. He had taken my quiet strength for weakness, my patience for ignorance, and that was his grave error. My mind, usually focused on market trends and investment strategies, now turned with laser precision to Julian's professional life. Oceana Innovations, his beloved company, the place where he spent his days, where he cultivated his image as a powerful, discerning man, the place where he was forging a new, illicit connection with Serena Dubois. The idea, sharp and clear, formed in my mind. He had chosen to play a dangerous game, one where he held all the cards, or so he thought. He had used his position, his power, to betray me. Now, it was time to remind him that some games have hidden players, and some seemingly ordinary opponents hold a hand he could never fathom. My quiet heartbrokenness began to transmute into a steely determination. The crack had appeared, but it would not be me who shattered. It would be Julian, caught in the intricate web of his own making, a web I was about to meticulously tighten. The stage was set, not just for his confession, but for a reckoning. And I, the ordinary wife, was ready to conduct the symphony of his downfall. The weeks following my silent discovery of Julian's affair were a strange, agonizing ballet of deception and observation. I became an actress in my own home, maintaining the facade of the dutiful, unassuming wife while my mind worked relentlessly, dissecting every word, every glance, every late-night text. Julian, emboldened by my apparent ignorance, grew bolder in his clandestine activities. His phone was an extension of his hand, often clasped tightly, face down, whenever I entered the room. He smelled faintly of a different perfume, not the one I wore. His eyes, when they met mine, held a fleeting impatience, as if I were a mild inconvenience interrupting his more exciting reality. The breaking point arrived, not quietly, but with a calculated cruelty that stripped away any lingering shred of my affection for him. It was a Saturday evening, a night we had traditionally reserved for a quiet dinner at home, a ritual I had held onto with a desperate hope for connection. I had prepared his favorite meal, a complex seafood pasta, and set the table with the good china. I even dressed in a soft, elegant silk top, hoping to spark some flicker of the man I once knew. He arrived home late, as usual, his tie askew, his hair slightly disheveled. The scent of an unfamiliar, sweeter perfume clung to him unmistakably this time. He didn't offer an apology or even a plausible excuse. He merely tossed his keys onto the console and slumped onto the sofa, pulling out his phone. "Julian," I began, my voice steady, "dinner is ready." He grunted, scrolling through his feed. "Not hungry, Isolde. Had a late working dinner. Big deal on the horizon, lots of pressure." He still wouldn't look at me. A cold rage, unlike anything I had ever felt, began to simmer. A working dinner, Julian, with Serena Dubois, perhaps. His head snapped up, his eyes widening in surprise, then narrowing with anger. He had been caught, and his first instinct was not remorse but attack. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Are you spying on me now? What is this, Isolde? Jealousy? Insecurity?" I stood in the archway to the dining room, bathed in the soft glow of the chandelier, a silent sentinel. "I saw your phone, Julian. A notification from Serena. Can't wait for tomorrow, Jay." He pushed himself off the sofa, walking towards me, his face contorted with a mixture of rage and panic. "You went through my phone, how dare you? That's an invasion of privacy, Isolde." "Is it?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "More of an invasion than bringing your affair into our home, into our bed." He stopped a few feet from me, his chest heaving. The mask of charm had completely fallen away, revealing a man I barely recognized. "Affair?" he spat, a sneer twisting his lips. "Don't be so dramatic, it's nothing serious. A temporary distraction." "And whose fault is that, Isolde?" My breath hitched. "Whose fault?" I whispered, utterly stunned by his audacity. "Yours," he roared, pointing a finger at me. "It's your fault, you're always so placid, so distant, so ordinary. I come home, invigorated, full of ideas, and what do I find? The same quiet woman, absorbed in her little hobbies, talking about her family trust accounts as if they're some grand empire. You're never really present, Isolde. You're always distracted. I needed someone vibrant, someone who understood the pressures of my world, someone who saw me. He paced the room, his words escalating in their cruelty, each one a hammer blow. You're content to live this quiet, beige life, while I'm out there conquering. Do you know how much pressure I'm under? Do you have any idea what it takes to run a company like Oceana Innovations? And you just exist. You don't challenge me, you don't excite me, you don't even seem to care. I need a partner, Isolde, not a decorative silent partner. He continued, his voice laced with a venomous contempt that shocked me to my core. Serena, she understands. She sees my vision. She's alive, Isolde. She's not ordinary. You blame me, but I blame you. You drove me to it with your quietness, your lack of passion, your endless distractions. The room seemed to spin. His words, a torrent of blame and belittlement, washed over me, threatening to drown me. Ordinary, distracted, lack of passion. You drove me to it. He was not only confessing, but twisting the knife, shifting all responsibility onto me, the wronged party. He truly believed I was merely a bystander in his grand life, an insufficient wife who had failed to keep him captivated. My hands clenched at my sides, my nails digging into my palms. I could feel the cold precision of my mind taking over, the emotional pain momentarily overridden by a stark, terrifying clarity. He saw me as a distraction. He blamed my little hobbies and my family trust for his moral failings. He thought I was ordinary and lacked passion for his world. Julian, I said, my voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through his enraged monologue with an icy edge that even he seemed to register. He stopped, his eyes still burning with self-pitying anger. You truly believe that, don't you? That I am ordinary, that I am distracted, that I don't understand your world, your company, your pressures. He scoffed. Of course I do. Look at you, Isolde. You're always so calm, so composed. It's infuriating. You have no idea what it takes to be at the top. A bitter, almost imperceptible smile touched my lips. No idea, Julian. I paused, letting the silence hang heavy between us, a prelude to the truth I was about to unleash. Perhaps it's time you learned how profoundly wrong you are. His eyes narrowed, sensing a shift he couldn't quite decipher, a dangerous edge to my quiet resolve. He mistook it for defiance, for a desperate attempt to regain control. Don't try to threaten me, Isolde. I'm not some junior associate you can manipulate with your quiet stares. This is my life, my career, my success. Your success, I repeated, a low, dangerous laugh escaping my lips. It wasn't amusement, but a chilling premonition of what was to come. You truly believe that, don't you? That it's all yours. His face flushed with fury. Get out of my way, Isolde. I'm not doing this right now. You can't possibly understand what I'm going through. He tried to brush past me, but I didn't move. My gaze was unwavering, holding his. You're right, Julian, I said, my voice gaining strength, each word a stone falling into a deep well. I don't understand what you're going through, but I understand what's coming. And you, my dear husband, have absolutely no idea. The unspoken threat hung in the air. He saw a flicker of something in my eyes he'd never seen before, not sadness, not anger, but a cold, calculated power. It unsettled him, briefly silencing his tirade. He stood there, fuming, caught between his outrage and a nascent, unidentifiable fear. The quiet wife he had dismissed, blamed, and betrayed had just promised him a reckoning. And in his arrogance, he still couldn't grasp the true nature of the storm he had just unleashed. He thought he was walking away from a petty marital dispute. He was, in fact, walking directly into a meticulously planned trap, a trap laid by the very woman he had deemed ordinary and distracted. The breaking point had arrived, and with it, the undeniable realization that Julian had awakened a sleeping giant. Julian stormed out that night, slamming the heavy front door, leaving me alone in the oppressive silence of our once shared home. I heard the screech of his tires as he sped away, presumably to Serena, to find the excitement and understanding I supposedly lacked. The seafood pasta I had painstakingly prepared sat cooling on the table, a testament to a shattered domestic ideal. But I didn't cry. The tears simply wouldn't come. What filled their place was a clarity so stark, so absolute, it was almost chilling. The pain was still there, a dull throb, but it was now overshadowed by a cold, surgical determination. I walked over to the dining table, picked up a pristine white napkin, and slowly, deliberately began to clear the plates. Each movement was precise, almost ritualistic. When the kitchen was spotless, and the last vestige of the ill-fated dinner had been erased, I poured myself a glass of water, walked to my study, and called Cyrus. It was nearly midnight, but Cyrus answered on the second ring, his voice crisp and alert. "Isolde, is everything all right?" "No, Cyrus," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. "Everything is decidedly not all right. Julian confessed his affair tonight. He also blamed me for it, for being ordinary and distracted by my little hobbies." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then Cyrus's voice, usually so composed, was laced with a quiet fury. The unmitigated gall. "I always knew he was a viper, Isolde, but to blame you. He believes I am oblivious to his world, Cyrus. That I don't understand the pressures of running a company like Oceana Innovations." I paused, taking a slow breath. "It's time, Cyrus. It's time to reveal the full extent of my distractions." "Are you certain?" he asked, his voice now cautious, recognizing the gravity of my decision. "Once this path is taken, there's no turning back. It will be public. And Julian's reputation, his entire career, will be irrevocably destroyed." "He destroyed ours first, Cyrus," I replied, the bitterness evident in my tone. "He chose to use my perceived, ordinary nature as a shield for his deceit and an excuse for his cruelty. He chose to belittle my intelligence, my passions, and my worth. He chose to spit on our marriage and then blame me for the mess he made. I will not stand for it." "Then we proceed," Cyrus stated, his voice now firm, resolute. "The acquisition of Oceana Innovations was completed quietly 3 years ago, Isolde. The holding company, managed under your direct instruction, holds 78% of the shares. Julian, as COO, reports indirectly to the CEO, Patrick O'Connell, who, in turn, reports directly to us. He has absolutely no idea that the family trust he so dismisses is the ultimate parent entity." "Precisely," I confirmed, a chilling satisfaction unfurling within me. "He thinks he's a vital cog in a machine, oblivious to the fact that I own the entire mechanism. He believes he's at the helm of a rising corporation, when in fact, he's merely a high-ranking employee of my company. And the company has been doing exceptionally well under Patrick's leadership," Cyrus added. "Which, ironically, Julian takes full credit for in his public appearances." "Let him," I said, a dry laugh escaping my lips. "The higher he climbs on the edifice he believes is his own, the further he has to fall when he realizes the true architect. What is the quickest, most impactful way to remove him from his position, Cyrus, without raising immediate suspicion?" "We can call an urgent board meeting for Monday morning," Cyrus proposed. "Citing a review of executive performance and strategic leadership direction. It's standard procedure. Patrick has been aware of your instructions and has prepared accordingly. He's been documenting Julian's increasingly erratic and self-serving behavior for months. At our request, we have ample grounds for immediate termination for cause, given recent ethical lapses and a clear deviation from corporate values, not to mention the potential for reputational damage to the company." "And Serena Dubois?" I asked, my voice hardening. "She's Julian's direct report," Cyrus explained. "Any fraternization would be a clear violation of company policy regarding workplace relationships and conduct, particularly when one party holds a senior leadership position." "Good," I stated, a sense of cold, clinical justice settling over me. "Prepare the necessary documents. Have Patrick ensure the board is assembled. I will be attending, not as Isolde Thorne, the ordinary wife, but as the principal shareholder and owner of Oceana Innovations." "It would be an honor to introduce you in that capacity, Isolde," Cyrus said, a rare warmth in his usually formal tone. "It's long overdue." I ended the call, the pieces of the intricate puzzle finally aligning. The secret, the twist Julian was so profoundly unaware of, was not merely that I was wealthy. It was that I owned his entire world. The family trust he dismissed was a global conglomerate, and Oceana Innovations, his pride and joy, was merely one of its many successful subsidiaries. His entire career, his perceived power, his professional identity, was built on ground I controlled. He had ridiculed my little hobbies, unaware that those hobbies involved orchestrating multi-million-dollar deals and managing vast enterprises. He had called me distracted, completely blind to the fact that my focus was sharper, my vision broader, than anything he could comprehend. He had sought excitement and understanding from Serena, completely unaware that the woman he dismissed as ordinary possessed the power to dismantle his entire professional existence with a single decisive stroke. My quiet life, my reserved demeanor, had been a shield, a deliberate choice to operate from the shadows, to influence without being overtly influenced by the often toxic glare of public scrutiny. I had built a formidable empire, not for ego or applause, but for the satisfaction of strategic mastery and the quiet power it afforded. And Julian, in his colossal arrogance, had mistaken that quiet strength for weakness. The irony was exquisite. He had blamed my detachment for his infidelity, yet his own detachment from reality, his self-absorption, had blinded him to the truth. He thought he was the architect of his own destiny, when in fact he was merely a pawn on my chessboard. The profound revelation, the hidden secret that changed everything, was that Julian Thorne, the celebrated COO of Oceana Innovations, was about to discover that his ordinary wife, Isolde, was not just his wife, but his ultimate boss. And the reckoning, cold and precise, was about to begin. Monday morning would not just be a board meeting. It would be the day Julian Thorne's carefully constructed world imploded, not from an outside force, but from the quiet power he had so contemptuously dismissed. Monday morning dawned with an unusual chill in the Ethelberg air, a crispness that seemed to mirror the sharpened edges of my resolve. I dressed meticulously, choosing a tailored charcoal suit that was both understated and undeniably powerful, a stark contrast to the flowing dresses Julian usually saw me in. My hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun, my face devoid of elaborate makeup, my expression calm, almost serene. This wasn't the Isolde he knew. This was the Isolde he had never bothered to see. Cyrus picked me up promptly at 8:30 a.m. He offered a small, reassuring smile as I settled into the back of his car. "Everything is in place, Isolde. Patrick has confirmed the board is assembled." Julian was informed of an urgent strategic review meeting. "He suspects nothing." "Good," I replied, my gaze fixed on the coastal road winding towards the gleaming glass towers of downtown Ethelberg. Oceana Innovations occupied the top 3 floors of the tallest building, a testament to its perceived success. Let's begin. We arrived at the Oceana Innovations building, a place I had only visited once before for a perfunctory corporate Christmas party, years ago. The lobby was sleek, modern, teeming with ambitious young professionals. Julian's domain. As we stepped into the private elevator reserved for executives, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and a cold, almost detached satisfaction. This wasn't revenge born of raw emotion, but of intellectual justice, a carefully orchestrated dismantling of hubris. We were ushered into the executive boardroom, a vast, glass-walled space overlooking the entire city and the shimmering ocean. The mahogany table was imposing, surrounded by a dozen high-backed leather chairs. Patrick O'Connell, the acting CEO, a man I had only known through virtual meetings and reports, rose to greet me, his face etched with a mix of respect and quiet apprehension. "Mrs. Thorne," he said, his voice deep, acknowledging my true position. "Thank you for joining us." The board members, a mix of seasoned veterans and sharp financial minds, were already seated. Their expressions ranged from professional curiosity to subtle deference as Cyrus introduced me, not by my married name, but by my maiden name, Isolde Vance, and then, simply, the principal shareholder and head of the holding company that owns Oceana Innovations. A hush fell over the room. Even Julian's most trusted allies shifted uneasily in their seats. Then, the doors opened, and Julian strode in, radiating his usual confident swagger. He was impeccably dressed, a faint smile playing on his lips, undoubtedly anticipating another opportunity to shine. His eyes swept across the room, registering Patrick, the board members, then landed on me, His smile faltered, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Isolde, he said, his brow furrowed. What are you doing here? Did you get lost on your way to the garden center? He chuckled, a nervous, forced sound, clearly attempting to deflect his surprise with condescension. The room remained silent, the board members carefully avoiding his gaze, their faces impassive. Julian, still oblivious, missed the warning signs entirely. Julian, Patrick began, his voice formal, please take a seat, we have an important matter to discuss. Julian still stood, his eyes fixed on me, trying to decipher my presence. This is highly unusual. Isolde, this is a board meeting, not a social tea. My wife doesn't involve herself in corporate matters. Cyrus stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. Mr. Thorne, Isolde Vance is here in her capacity as the principal shareholder and the owner of the parent company that controls Oceana Innovations. She is here to lead this meeting. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. Julian's face, which had been a mask of confusion and annoyance, slowly, incrementally, began to drain of all color. His jaw went slack. His eyes, fixed on me, widened in an understanding that was both terrifying and utterly devastating. The casual dismissal, the contempt, the arrogance, it all vanished, replaced by a raw, naked horror. What are you saying? He stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The holding company. Isolde, you. I met his gaze, my eyes cold, unwavering. Yes, Julian, me, the ordinary wife, the one distracted by her little hobbies and her family trust accounts. I paused, letting the full weight of the revelation crush him. Oceana Innovations, your esteemed company, has been a subsidiary of my holdings for the past 3 years. I own it. You, Julian, are merely an employee of my company. The words were a physical blow. He stumbled backward, grasping the back of an empty chair, his knuckles white. This is impossible. You're lying. My family trust is a small fund. Your understanding of my family's financial arrangements, and indeed of my capabilities, has always been rather limited, Julian, I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. As you so eloquently put it, you believed I was too distracted to understand your world. The truth is, I am your world, or rather, I own the world you so proudly inhabit. Patrick then stepped in, his voice formal and clinical. Julian, we are here today to conduct a review of your performance as Chief Operating Officer. Due to a serious breach of corporate ethics, documented instances of professional misconduct, and a clear deviation from the company's core values, the board, in consultation with Ms. Vance, has voted unanimously to terminate your employment with immediate effect. Your access to company systems will be revoked by the end of the day. Julian stared at Patrick, then at Cyrus, then back at me, his eyes pleading, disbelieving. Ethical breaches? What are you talking about? This is a conspiracy. Isolde, what have you done? You can't do this. Oh, but I can, Julian, I said, a faint, bitter smile touching my lips. And I am. Your affair with Serena Dubois, a direct report, is a gross violation of company policy. Your belittling of staff, your inflated expense reports, your consistent efforts to undermine internal processes for personal gain, all meticulously documented. You called me distracted, Julian. But while you were elsewhere, I was very focused. Focused on the integrity of my company and the well-being of its employees, including the ones you chose to exploit. The color drained from his face completely. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked utterly broken, his carefully constructed edifice of power and self-importance crumbling before his very eyes. The man who had entered the room with such arrogance now stood exposed, stripped bare of his false glory, his entire reality shattered. Security will escort you out, Patrick concluded, his voice firm. You will be given the standard severance package as per your contract. Your personal effects will be couriered to your residence. Julian didn't fight. He didn't argue. He simply stood there, staring at me, a desperate, pathetic shadow of his former self. His eyes, once so full of contempt, now held only a profound, agonizing realization of his colossal misjudgment. He had called me ordinary. He had blamed my quietness. He had dismissed my intelligence. And in doing so, he had handed me the sharpest weapon imaginable: his complete and utter ignorance of the woman he had married. As 2 discreet security guards approached, Julian finally tore his gaze from mine, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He walked past me, his once confident stride now a defeated shuffle. He didn't say goodbye, didn't make a scene. He simply walked out of the boardroom, out of the company he thought was his, and out of my life, a shell of the man who had dismissed me as distracted just days earlier. The emotional victory was not loud or explosive, but a quiet, chilling satisfaction. Justice, in its purest, most poetic form, had been served, and it had been served by the ordinary wife he had so casually cast aside. The silence that Julian left behind in the boardroom was profound, almost reverent. The board members, who had witnessed the dramatic unraveling of their COO, remained impassive, but a subtle shift in the air was palpable. A newfound respect, perhaps even a hint of fear, for the quiet woman who had just orchestrated such a meticulously devastating outcome. After Julian's exit, the meeting proceeded with an efficiency that belied the recent drama. I addressed the board, outlining my vision for Oceana Innovations, emphasizing ethical leadership, sustainable growth, and a renewed focus on employee welfare. My voice, calm and assured, filled the room, projecting an authority that was both undeniable and entirely unexpected by most of them. Patrick O'Connell looked relieved. Serena Dubois would be dealt with appropriately by HR, and the path forward was clear. In the days and weeks that followed, the news of Julian Thorne's abrupt departure from Oceana Innovations sent ripples through Ethelberg's tech community. The official statement cited personal reasons and a mutual decision to part ways. But the whispers were far more damning. Rumors of an internal investigation into misconduct and unethical behavior circulated, fueled by carefully placed leaks from Cyrus's office. Julian's carefully constructed professional reputation, once gleaming, began to tarnish, then crumble. He tried to salvage his image, reaching out to old contacts, but the doors that had once flown open for him were now firmly shut. The industry, ever sensitive to reputation, quickly ostracized him. His arrogance, once perceived as charming ambition, was now seen as a fatal flaw. His connections, once his greatest asset, evaporated. He became a pariah, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones at industry galas he was no longer invited to. Our divorce was swift and quiet, handled with the same clinical precision I had applied to Julian's professional downfall. He contested nothing. Stripped of his power and his professional identity, he was a hollow shell, incapable of mounting any real resistance. He moved out of our home, his grand dreams for the future replaced by a bleak, uncertain reality. The man who had once believed himself invincible was now utterly powerless, facing a future devoid of the accolades and admiration he craved. Anya, my dear friend, was furious on my behalf when she finally learned the full extent of Julian's betrayal and my secret. I knew he was a narcissist, Izzy. She fumed over a celebratory lunch a few weeks later. But to blame you. For his own weakness. And you owned his whole damn company, the irony is delicious. She clinked her glass against mine, her eyes sparkling with pride. You are incredible, Isolde. You always were. He saw what he wanted to see, Anya, I replied, a profound sense of peace settling over me. He saw a quiet wife, easily dismissed, content in her ignorance. He never bothered to look deeper to see the true landscape of my world. His arrogance blinded him. And you let him, Anya mused, a knowing smile on her face. You let him walk into his own trap. Silence, I said, looking out at the endless expanse of the ocean from the restaurant window, can be the sharpest weapon. It allows others to underestimate you, to reveal their true nature, and to dig their own graves without you ever lifting a finger. In the aftermath, I found a freedom I hadn't realized I was missing. I stepped more fully into my role, not just as the principal shareholder, but as a visible leader, albeit still quietly impactful. I began to diversify my holdings, taking on new challenges, mentoring young talent, and advocating for ethical leadership in the cutthroat world of tech. I learned that true power wasn't about control over others, but about self-possession, integrity, and the courage to wield one's truth when necessary. I never saw Julian again, not truly. I heard whispers of him struggling to find new employment, his name now synonymous with professional disgrace. He had sought excitement and passion elsewhere, and in doing so, he had lost everything he thought he had built. He had blamed my distractions and called me ordinary, failing to see that the quiet woman he dismissed held the reins to his entire existence. His downfall wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow, agonizing realization, carefully orchestrated by the woman he had so contemptuously underestimated. It was a testament to the fact that arrogance blinds, and true power often operates in the most unexpected and unassuming forms. My quiet nature, once a perceived weakness, became my greatest strength. My silence, once mistaken for apathy, became the canvas upon which Julian painted his own undoing. Julian Thorne sought to diminish me, to make me feel small and insignificant. He believed I was just the CEO's wife, oblivious to the world he inhabited. But in the end, he discovered that the CEO's wife he called ordinary was, in fact, the CEO, and his entire world belonged to her. The lesson burned bright in the quiet aftermath, etched into the very fabric of my being. Silence can be the sharpest weapon, especially when wielded by a mind underestimated and a heart betrayed.